here we have Rajan's old pump. It is extremely loud. I'm gonna plug it in. Something definitely wrong. Sounds like the bearings, but maybe something else as well. Okay, so now we are looking at the pump. We're gonna go ahead and take it apart, see what's wrong with it. Hopefully we can fix it. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and open it up. Start by taking off these 6 bolts. There's 3 more on the other side. You're going to want a 9/16 socket and or wrench, ideally both. And we're going to go ahead and take those off. So now, we'll go ahead and remove the final bolt. Pull these 2 halves apart. Now we've separated the front half from the back half. We'll have to next take off the diffuser to expose the impeller. It's held on by 2 tiny little screws. So now we're going to take our 3 32nd Allen wrench and remove these 2 little screws. Okay, we got that one loose. This one down here loose. It just pulls off to expose the impeller. On the whisperflo pumps, there is a screw inside here which you first remove, and it's important to note that it is reverse thread. So this is one of the rare situations where it is lefty tighty, righty loosey. Got that loose, so now we're going to pull this screw out, and now we will twist off the impeller, and it goes normal way, lefty loosey, but it is attached to the shaft and spinning on the shaft. So to spin it off, we're going to have to remove this cap and grab onto the back of the shaft with something. Pop the cap off. Now I'm going to just hold the back of the shaft with this same 9mm wrench. Usually use channel locks or something. And as I hold that with one hand, I'll spin it off with the other, which I can't do while I'm holding the camera. Then the impeller eventually spins off. Looking at the impeller, back half of the shaft seal, the shaft, and the other half of the shaft seal. And next we'll remove this piece, which is the seal plate, and it's held on by 4 bolts, 2 up top, 2 down on the bottom. Gonna grab our same 9mm wrench or socket and take those 4 out. And once those 4 bolts are all removed, sometimes you have to just bang it off, but the seal plate will then separate from the motor. Looking at the seal plate and the motor shaft, still spinning, but definitely not spinning smoothly. So now we'll go ahead and start disassembling the motor. I went ahead and removed the 2 screws that hold this little plate over the power connector off. Actually don't know if that's really necessary, but I went ahead and removed it for now to get it out of the way. And I'm going to just take these 2 screws off that go on top of the capacitor. Get that thing out of the way. Could use a Phillip head, ideally a 1/4 inch nut driver. So I got those 2 screws undone, so I'll remove the little cover. Sign. Now we have our capacitor here, which we can also unhook. Don't believe it matters which wire connects to which side, so we'll just unhook that. once that's off, out of the way, we are going to remove these 4 bolts, which are called the through bolts. They're long bolts that go all the way from the back to the front and ultimately hold that together. We'll pull these 4 long bolts out, and then I think like hit that with a hammer to kind of knock it off. Now we're going to remove the 4 through bolts. They're called through bolts because they go all the way through. 4 of these, and we got all 4 removed. Now we're going to knock off this end, which we are probably going to just hit it hard with the hammer a few times. Once you've tapped it enough, it eventually separates. And it'll separate enough where you can pull the center of the motor out, exposing the bearings there and in there. I believe this screw is still holding this in. Little bracket back there, so we're going to remove that. I need to go ahead and pull this other bearing off. Finish cleaning the shaft here. Looks pretty bad. Already pulled this bearing off. Shaft cleaned up alright. And I thought maybe I should try doing this during the day, so don't have the ambient sound of the kogi frogs in the background as I do at night. Anyway, I'm going to use this bearing puller, got off eBay, and slip it on. A little hard to do with one hand. So I got the bearing puller on. Still going to have to use both hands to twist this off. But once you twist it, and just pop this bearing off. Alright, gave it a few twists, and this popped off. The whole thing just slides off. Now we got it off. So I will finish cleaning up the shaft as well as the rest of the motor, because when I initially went to put it back together, it was so caked with crap, couldn't really put it back together like that, so I knocked all the rusty spots off. Already cleaned up the motor extensively. If you can believe it, actually looks much better now than it did. So I got the flaky paint off, kind of looked like my barbecue chimney charcoal starter. I mean, just rust bucket. But it's cleaning up alright. At this point I probably went totally overboard, but it's knocking the paint off. Still looked terrible. I thought, well, if you're going to rebuild a pool pump, why not do it with some style? So we have started painting these guys. Chose a blue. Got Jeep parts sitting around here. Been doing the same thing to them anyway. Thought, why not do it to the pump? Back here with the chorus of the Kokies, and we are looking at the shaft. Got the motor mostly ready to be put back together and prepped. But first, we need to put the new bearings on the shaft so we can finish putting the motor back together. So I guess what we'll do is essentially take the new bearings, slide it onto the shaft, we'll tap it into place with a lead pipe and hammer. Alright, got the first bearing tapped on, and do the other side. And obviously you want to be kind of careful banging it with a hammer or whatever, but you really don't need much. Just kind of tap it down into place, seat it. Stops when it hits the little ring. Alright, now we got both bearings on the shaft, and it was a little hard to show doing it, so I need both hands. obviously, to hold the pipe and beat it with the hammer. Anyway, now we're going to take the shaft and insert it into our motor. So basically, I've turned the motor back sideways. Tried to slap the end back on. I've stuck the shaft inside. It's a little tricky because I don't have any marks to line the front and back up with since I painted it, but go ahead and slide the front end of the motor housing on, see if I can get it to line up. Then we're going to take our through bolts, which have also been painted, and run them back through to hold the motor together. Alright, finally managed to get them lined up. I'm going to put the last through bolt through. Alright, well, at this point we essentially got the pump put back together, and I did the best I could to reattach the label, which tells important things like horsepower and wiring, so they can come out perfect. It's tough getting off. I ended up kind of awkwardly crazy gluing it back on there, but other than that, came out pretty nice. Alright, spin it around, just get a little shot of the other side. Overall, I don't know, looks clean. Painted blue, going new. Motor's ready, so we'll go ahead and start slapping the front of it on. So next up, we got to deal with the seal plate. Need to put our new shaft seal on, and we'll grab a little bit of silicone, not much, just a dab, kind of put it around the inside of the ring to, I guess, help seal it up. Lubrication more than anything. And we'll take the 1/2 of the shaft seal, put a whisperflo. It's kind of obvious. It's this big piece with the metal ring. I'll seat that down there. And I like to kind of push it down with a 1-inch coupling. Fits pretty well over the seal and onto that ring. So I'm just going to press it down. Maybe tap it down with something like a trusty pair of channel locks. And that's seated. And now we're going to just kind of line them up, pop them onto the back motor, and get our 4 bolts ready to secure it in place. So I went ahead and put in these 4 bolts and tightened them up with a 9/16 socket. Now that we got the seal plate on, we are going to take the other half of the shaft seal and stick it in the impeller. I'm going to screw the impeller back on the shaft. Impeller is back on, and we're going to put the screw back in, and it is reverse thread. We're going to take our diffuser, flip it over the impeller where it locks into place, and then tighten our pair of 3/32. Okay, now, well, I got the gaskets on, lubed up, and I suppose I will go ahead and take the main body housing and slide it on. And now we got it all back together. Looks good as new. So we got the pump all put back together and it looks good, but I guess the one thing we still need to do is make sure it runs and sounds good as well. So we're just going to plug it in and see. And yeah, it's considerably quieter than it was before. Actually sounds like a new pump as well as looking like a new pump. Might have to compare it to the old one just for reference. But all in all, I'd say it was a success.